last night, AOC and Bernie Sanders hosted a joint town hall on CNN. Now, I feel as though this is an effort to try to increase Democrat Party support because the support for the Democratic Party right now is in the toilet. And I'm putting that mildly, which is interesting considering, they're not in the White House. They don't have the House or the Senate. Republicans have all three branches. But a lot of this stems from Democrat voters feeling as though the politicians in the Democratic Party aren't fighting the way that they should, or they're not fighting hard enough. And I would say, well, that's because they're not really fighters. Like, they really would rather have the status quo maintained, right? So we can bring up all these different issues as to how things became the way that they are today. But ultimately, I would say the Democratic Party not having a working class agenda, abandoning the working class, definitely failing on Gaza is a number of things that put them in this current situation, and things are not improving. There were a couple of things that were said during this town hall that I do want to discuss. And in particular, there was a comment made about Joe Biden. So let's go ahead and get into the first clip here. One of the first things they are questioned about is Zoran Mandami and if people should be supporting him. Check this out.
So it sounds like you're calling on Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer to endorse Zoran Mandami.
I believe that I do believe in endorsing the nominee, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Well, Senator Sanders, you agree?
Let me just add to that. She's much nicer than nicer to people. Look, take a look. You got a Democratic Party. There's no great secret that it's kind of in the doldrums right now. Everybody acknowledges that. You got a candidate in New York City, Zoran Mamdani. Guy who's running an extraordinary campaign. He has something like 80,000 volunteers knocking on doors. He is bringing people out who never voted. He is bringing blacks and whites and Latinos and Asians, everybody together around a really strong agenda talking about affordability in New York. What is not to like? This should be the kind of candidate that Democrats want in every state in the country. Strong grassroots campaigns, a willingness to take on the oligarchs and the big money interests, stand up for working class people. So really, that's a great question, but it's very deep because it talks about the future of the Democratic Party.
But are you speaking directly to Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer when you deliver that message?
Sure I am. Hakeem, you watching this? I don't know. All right. But look, it is two things. Of course, Alexandria is right. He's the Democratic nominee. How do you not support the Democratic guy? But more importantly,
who else are we going to support?
he's a great candidate. This should be the model. What we want, we got political problems in America. People are giving up on the political process. He's getting people excited, getting them involved. I would like to see that take place in 50 states in this country.
So let me go ahead and respond to this, because here's the thing. You know who else had a lot of volunteers? And they had a lot of volunteers all across the entire country. Probably one of the biggest political movements I saw after Obama's presidential campaign. Bernie Sanders did. Twice. Bernie Sanders had energized young people all across this country for the 2016 presidential election and the 2020 presidential election. He got people excited. He said we were going to have a political revolution. That did not happen, because the Democratic Party cheated in 2016 and gave states that he won to Hillary Clinton during the Democratic National Convention. The Democratic Party has superdelegates. That's how they were able to cheat then. In 2020, he was more popular then, according to the polls. And in 2020, what did they do this time? Barack Obama made a phone call, told all these other candidates to drop out of the race so it would help Biden going into Super Tuesday. And next thing you know, then Bernie decides he's going to drop out too and tell people to go ahead and support Biden, just like he told people to go ahead and support Hillary Clinton. So Bernie knows the answer to his own question when he says what's not to like. He knows that it's the establishment, it's the Democratic Party, and in particular, the Democratic Party leadership. They do not want to endorse anybody who is not, quote unquote, pro-Israel, and by pro-Israel, I mean Zionist to their standards. They are not going to endorse or support anybody who actually has a working class agenda. They're not going to support or endorse anybody that calls themselves a democratic socialist. Same reason why they didn't support or endorse Bernie. So Bernie already, he knows why, right? So here's the thing. We have to ask the right questions, right? At this point in time, Bernie Sanders and AOC, and I do believe that the oligarchy tour that was done was a way to put AOC out there in front of a lot of people to see if basically to prep her for a race against Chuck Schumer or a presidential run. I believe that Bernie is prepping AOC to kind of step in his shoes. That's what I feel this is really all about. And then also, of course, they're trying to increase support for the Democratic Party, right? But see, the problem is all that energy that Bernie was able to, I guess, garner at that point in time, it kind of just went by the wayside when he told everyone to vote for Biden, just like it did when he told everybody to vote for Hillary Clinton. But in 2020 in particular, he said if he lost, he would still be out there outside in the streets with his people. That did not happen. He told people to give Biden a chance. During Biden's presidency, he constantly made excuses for Biden. Of course, he did say he would like to have Medicare for all, but he constantly defended Joe Biden, and both of them did actually. When Biden was running for re-election, they endorsed him, they supported him. So a lot of the energy that was happening then, some of that has gone to support Zoran Mandami. But then there's a good portion of us that just kind of checked out. Because there's no way, and I said this before, you can't tell me all the rallies and things that I saw when you have thousands and thousands of people to come to see you, but Joe Biden comes here and has a couple hundred. There's no way you can't tell me that the Democratic Party didn't make it so that Bernie would not be the nominee again in 2020, like they did in 2016. So they send Bernie Sanders and AOC out there for this town hall. And it's interesting, CNN is allowing this now. And the reason why CNN is allowing it, we have to ask the right questions. They are allowing it because Trump is in office. This is not something they really want to pursue when the Democrats have the White House. So when Biden was in office, Bernie and AOC and the rest of them, they kind of get in line and they support the party, even though Bernie isn't even a part of the party, but he caucuses with the party. It seems to me what I have noticed over the years is that it is only when Trump is in power that then it's like it's time to fight. So that's why CNN is supporting them and having this town hall, and they let them come on together like this. This is why, because Trump is in office. Listen to this part here. AOC is questioned about healthcare. You guys really got to listen to this part.
I want to bring in Jill Ireland, who is a Democrat who works in insurance. She's from Santa Barbara, California, and her question is appearing via video tonight.
Hello. My question is, do you think that taxpayers should be paying for the medical care of immigrants that are in the country illegally? Thank you.
Well, we already know, and this is a common lie that Republicans have been repeating, that this shutdown is about Democrats trying to provide health care to the undocumented. And we already know that it is federal law and federal statute that undocumented people cannot be covered by the ACA, they cannot be covered by Medicaid, they cannot be covered by Medicare. Period. That is the law of the land. There are plenty of federal laws on the books. Now, the vice president has been trafficking this other misconception, saying that the emergency Medicaid program is providing health care to undocumented people. That too is a complete, just, I don't even know, whole cloth storytelling, we should say. The truth of the matter is that we have a federal law, as it should be, that any person who walks into a hospital in desperate need of medical attention receives that medical attention regardless of their insurance status and regardless of who they are. And I don't know about you, but me as a human being, I don't want to live in a world where if a human being is struck by a car or is getting rushed into a hospital, that the people in the ER surgical room are asking for your insurance information or asking for documents before they save your life.
But can I ask you on this to follow up? Because you said that it is federal law that people, undocumented immigrants, can't get Medicare, Medicaid, the Obamacare subsidies. Do you believe that should be the law, though? Or do you think undocumented immigrants should have access to federally funded health care?
I believe personally that health care is a human right. I believe that every person should be able to go to the doctor. But I believe that right now, federal law is the federal law. And that absolutely, that U.S. citizens and people who pay into our programs deserve to be covered by these programs. And I mean, once again, I do believe that the federal laws that we have on the books are appropriate.
But if you could choose, do you believe that should be changed?
Pardon?
If you could choose, do you believe that the federal law should be changed?
I don't. I believe in a single-payer healthcare system where if you go in and you need a doctor, you can get the medical attention that you need.
So this question is going to have to be answered at some point, right? And this is something I think that progressives may not like to hear, but AOC's response to that question is that, well, my response is I agree with universal health care that, if you come to see a doctor and you should be able to get to yada, yada. But that question is going to come up again, right? And that question, a lot of times it is going to come from the right. And if AOC is preparing to run for president in 2020, that question is going to come up again. What was interesting is that she said she agrees with the federal law as it is right now. So I don't know, because I kind of feel like she's kind of playing in the middle a little bit here. I agree with the current law to make it appear as though, of course, I don't want to break any laws. But then when asked would she change that? Would that be something she'd be looking to change? Well, I agree with the universal healthcare system. So she was deflecting a little bit there, not really answering that question if that's something that she would want to change. Now, here's the thing. I think the reason why she didn't answer it that way is because she knows that this is a controversial issue. CNN has changed a little bit over the past, I say 2 years, where they also have like Republicans on CNN now as well. Even in that audience, there were Republicans also in the audience. Everybody's not like a Democrat and, all that kind of stuff, how CNN was more so before. So I think she's trying to find a way to be careful with her words. But the reality is at some point, that question is going to have to be answered. The most shocking part here was the part about Biden, like what they said to Joe Biden in reference to Gaza. Listen to this.
So, Caitlin, when you talk about, are we overjoyed that the hostages are back, that prisoners are released, that finally there is peace, hopefully it lasts? Yes, absolutely. But I think this is not a time for credit. This is a time to think about American policy. Mm-hmm. Are we happy that we have given tens of billions of dollars to destroy the Palestinian people? Israel had a right to defend itself. They were attacked by a terrorist group. They did not have a right to go to an all-out war against women and children in Gaza.
And more.
So this is the both sides, right? So see what I'm saying? This is why they're allowed to be on CNN. Because here's the thing. Under international law, no, they don't have a right to defend themselves. An occupying state, an occupying nation does not have the right to defend themselves. And people who are occupied have the right to resist with arms. I didn't make up the law. That's what it says on the books. So again, I can't believe I have to say this in 2025. You cannot both sides a genocide. You can't both sides occupation. You can't both sides oppression. And see what I mean? This is why they are on CNN. This is why they're allowed on CNN. Because if they said what I just told you, they wouldn't have been invited on there in the first place. You can't both sides it. I don't understand why people, and Bernie does not take any money from AIPAC. I don't understand why people are so afraid to say what the international law says. And at Bernie's age, he can retire at any time, anytime. So I don't want to say he's trying to pursue a political career. He's done that. So I don't know what the holdup is there. I really don't. Now listen to what AOC says about that.
Moreover, on this issue as well, is that we may have an announcement around a ceasefire, but Gaza has been flattened. Tens of thousands of people are dead. Universities gone. Hospitals eliminated. With American-made bombs. With our tax dollars. While you and me and our families can't even afford to put food on the table. And so
let me pause here for a second, and I just want to respond to this. No, Space says he's Jewish. What do you expect? No. There are plenty of anti-Zionist Jewish allies. Max Blumenthal, Katie Halper, Aaron Mate. There are plenty of them. And they would not give that response that Bernie just gave.
So I welcome the cessation of these bombs dropping in Gaza. But I don't, the devastation of everything that we have endured up until this point is not something that I think we should celebrate. The United States played a role in all of this destruction to begin with.
And so did AOC. Don't forget that she voted to protect Israel's defense system. Now, why is this important? Imagine if there was a mass shooter. It's almost as if to vote to allow Israel to continue to have the Iron Dome. She should have definitely voted against that, especially as if she's a democratic socialist. That's a no-brainer. You are allowing them to continue to attack and occupy the Palestinian people with no recourse. It's like allowing a mass shooter to go into a building, commit numerous atrocities, and at the same time, you're giving them a bulletproof vest to protect them. So she played a role in this too. Her votes played a role in this as well. And that needs to be said.
Enabling Benjamin Netanyahu in dropping all of these bombs by refusing to enforce our own American laws and the Leahy laws on the books, which says that we cannot be transferring weapons to forces that are engaged in gross human rights violations. Right. And we look the other way because we deem them an ally.
And you're saying that's not something that you're a criticism that you're just applying to President Trump in terms
of
support.
President Biden did it. President Biden did it, and I have absolutely said that to him in person as well. Bernie and I.
We spent a long time with President Biden trying to make the case.
I've given President Biden hell about this, and President Trump has absolutely been part of this problem as well. In fact, he was bragging publicly about Benjamin Netanyahu ringing him up and asking for all these kinds of bombs that he doesn't even know the United States has, and him signing off on it.
Can I ask?
Pause here for a second. Yes, both presidents are complicit, Trump and Biden. However, I want to say something here. What Bernie and AOC just said right there about how they approached Biden about it privately, that would have been something really good to say publicly prior to the presidential election. Because here's the thing, okay? Whatever conversations that took place privately, none of us know about that. Nobody knows about that. Biden at that time, especially when he was still running and he refused to get out of this race, both of them still endorsed and supported Joe Biden. When Kamala Harris jumped into the race, of course, one of the big questions is what is going to be her position on the Israel-Gaza situation? And there seemed to be some hope there from some in the beginning where people are like, I think she's going to be more sympathetic. But then, she had those interviews and she said that she would not withhold weapons to Israel and she will always support Israel. I don't like this whole after the fact, let's come forward and say what we did that nobody else knew about at that point in time. If AOC and Bernie Sanders would have come forward about that at that point in time. Same thing with Kamala. She wrote it in her book too, that she could not get Biden to budge on this issue. That should have been public. That should have been public. Because the thing is, it doesn't help anything now. It's like, it's like you're coming forward to say it doesn't help anything now. And who knows, if they would have said that publicly, then some of the pro-Palestinian protesters probably would have been like, oh, okay, so it's Biden is not willing to move at all. He was lying about trying to do a ceasefire. But here's the tricky part. At the Democratic National Convention, AOC said they're working tirelessly for a ceasefire. We all knew that was a lie. So she played along with this game a little bit too. That should have been made public. Because Kamala didn't want to detach herself from Biden and all that stuff. And I honestly still don't think that Kamala would have won. But to the Oracle's point, a public critique invites public pressure and increases the likelihood of a course correction. Right. There's all this after the fact. Well, let's tell you what was really going on at the time that you guys didn't know about. However, instead of making that public, this is what AOC decided to do. You see, she made that video. Remember they made the video where she said Jill Stein was being predatory? And you can have whatever opinions you have about the Green Party. I've had my criticisms about the Green Party, but I talked to them about it, either face to face or on this show. She spent her time making this video attacking Jill, who was correct on the Gaza position, had the correct position, when she should have made that video about Joe Biden. Remember this?
You're just showing up once every 4 years to do that. You're not serious. You're not to me, it does not read as authentic. It reads as predatory.
Jill here. I'm about to board, but very quickly, I just wanted to thank AOC Pelosi so very much for her very authentic concern about growing green power. Clearly, AOC is the attack dog du jour, and the Democrats are running scared, and they should be, because who wants to support a genocide? Who wants to vote for a genocide? And if there's anything that's predatory here, it's saying that your candidate is working tirelessly for a ceasefire when actually they are actively funding and arming genocide and actually refusing to even consider an arms embargo, which would bring the genocide to a screeching halt.
Yeah, so you guys remember this, right? So all the efforts that she was doing on social media at that point in time to attack Jill Stein, she should have made a video about what her and Bernie just said about what happened with Joe Biden. That should have been public. They should have told people Biden is not willing to budge on this. I mean, why not? They had no problem going after Bernie. Elizabeth Warren had no problem in 2020 saying that Bernie Sanders was a sexist and told her that a woman couldn't win the presidency. But they didn't do it because they still want to be in the club. AOC does have political aspirations. So she's looking at her political career. So I'm going to play nice in public and say Biden's great and he's doing a great job. Behind the scenes, I'll go to him about this genocide issue, but just not being transparent. And one of the things that we talked about before on this show in particular is the transparency, right? So one of the things I do want to remind people, as much as she came after Jill Stein, when you go back to AOC's 2018 platform, it is a carbon copy from Jill Stein's 2016 campaign. That's where this came from. A lot of this, the peace economy, the federal jobs, the gun control, remember abolish ICE? That wasn't discussed once Biden was in office. Now they're talking about it again. But when Biden was in office, Democrats fund ICE too. Solidarity with Puerto Rico, climate change, all these things. This came from Jill Stein's 2016 campaign, and it was funneled into a corporate, corrupt party. So this town hall, in my opinion, is really about the future of DSA candidates like AOC, possibly a presidential run. But when she was questioned about whether or not she was going to run against Chuck Schumer. They didn't like this question.
But are you saying that Senator Schumer should not be worried about a primary challenge from you?
I mean,
All right.
no.
Let me jump
I don't
in on
think
this one.
Is about
This is,
anything-
see,
this is what we're
Caitlin,
talking about.
that's exactly what we're talking
This is what we're
You have a
talking
country
about.
that is falling apart. We had a housing crisis, a healthcare crisis, an education crisis, massive income and wealth inequality, a corrupt campaign finance system, and the media says, "Oh, you're going to run? What are you going to run for?" Nobody cares. She'll run more towards
Nobody cares. It's the House Speaker and President Trump and the Vice President saying it.
All right.
Pardon?
Well, of course, they're saying it to deflect attention away from the real issue.
Exactly.
And here, let me tell you what the real issue is. Let's see if CNN talks about it. We're living in the richest country in the history of the world, right? All right, you tell me why we're the only nation not to guarantee health care to all people, the only nation not to guarantee paid family and medical leave, why we have a $7.25 an hour minimum wage, why we have 800,000 people sleeping out on the street, why we have a president who denies the reality of climate change, why we have oligarchs on top who have more and more power every day. Let's talk about that issue, not her own political future. She'll decide that.
Now, he has a point. The economy is a mess, and that does need to be the focus. But it doesn't help that AOC had her own staff members came forward and reported to Axios that they were prepping her for a run. So that's where that is coming from, right? So that's why they did ask that question. What this means is this. I'm going to show you this poll, and this is not good for the Democratic Party. This is why they got AOC and Bernie out there. Remember, Democrats do not have control of the House, the Senate, of course, obviously, not the White House. Look at these numbers.
Okay, so, if you go back 6 months ago, you go back to April, Kate Baldwin, what were we looking at? Well, we were looking at the Democrats with a very clear shot of taking control of the U.S. House of Representatives, according to the Kalshi prediction market odds. We saw them in an 83% chance. But those odds have gone plummeting down. Now we're talking about just a 63% chance, while the GOP's chances up like a rocket, up like gold, up from 17% to now a 37% chance. So we'll look like a pretty clear, likely Democratic win in the House come next year has become much closer to a toss-up at this point, although still slightly leaning Democratic.
This is what I have been telling people about. This is what happens when we have a ratchet effect. When you have a Democratic Party that stops change from moving to the left, and I mean the real left, and you have a Republican Party that moves things further to the right, you get this ratchet effect. And ultimately what ends up happening is people they'll boomerang back and forth. So some of the people who voted for Biden in 2020 voted for Trump in 2024. Economic reasons for a lot of them. I talked to the voters on the ground. So then you'll have this other boomerang effect where they may go back to the other party because they're still having the economic issues. The problem is it doesn't get ultimately solved for working class people because both parties are corporate and corrupt. And until you get big money out of electoral politics, there's always going to be this issue. And ultimately, what you are finding now is that the country is moving further to the right. This is something that I warned people about, that if the Democratic Party did not get on board with policies that were going to benefit working class Americans, people who need health care, which a lot of people in this country do, people who need to make a living wage. Stop coming to me with the $15 minimum wage. That is past due. You can't live off that in most of these states anyway. People need a living wage. If the Democrats flipped on this, if they were not able to give to the needs of the working class, that what would ultimately happen is that people would go over to the other team, and a lot of them are independents, would go over to the other team because that team let them down. And this back and forth we've seen, haven't you guys noticed? Since Obama, we haven't had a president that has had 2 terms consecutively. Trump won in 2016, lost in 2020. Biden won in 2020, lost in 2024. Trump wins in 2024. So the economic issues are crucial. And until the Democratic Party is actually prepared to implement these policies that are going to benefit the working class, this is going to continue to happen. I've been sounding this warning for so long. That's why you're seeing these numbers change like this, where the Republican Party, they're getting gains and the Democratic Party is not. And then ultimately, another thing that does not help is that people are looking back, and even some of my friends, because I have friends of different political ideologies, and most of my friends are just like, screw all the politics. They're not even interested. But friends of mine who are Democrats, they said the thing that frustrates them the most is that Trump is showing them everything that the Democratic Party could have done. And that's why they're frustrated. And that's why they're like, this is just ridiculous. I'm not happy with the Democratic Party at this point in time. So AOC and Bernie Sanders town hall, that is an effort to try to increase that support there for the Democratic Party because it's been in the toilet. And here's the thing, with all the policies that Donald Trump has passed, if anything, you would think support would increase for the Democratic Party, but that's not happening. So what does that tell you? We have to ask the right question, ladies and gents. We have to ask the right question. Because these politicians, they don't really, some of them may want change, but not to the point where they're willing to give up their career for it. Got to ask the right question. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.